Hi, my name's Reiko, and this is the video for your touch chat training. Hopefully you just watched the intro to AAC video. We go into how you would implement something like touch chat with your student, things like modeling, the types of vocabulary that we would have in the system and things like that. So if you haven't, please go back and watch that one first because you'll need that context to understand what's going on in this video. So in this video, we're going to be talking about touch chat features. We'll talk about some iPad settings and some customization. So what is AAC? We just talked about it in the last video, but AAC can be light tech or paper-based systems. It can be low tech or it can be high tech. And an iPad with touch chat is an example of a high tech system. So touch chat features. When you see a report written by an AAC SLP, you won't just see the student uses touch chat for communication. You'll see something more wordy. So it might say touch chat with WordPower 42. That's the vocabulary we have on the screen here in the PowerPoint slides. So the device is an iPad, and we have different apps on iPads. And so the app is called touch chat. But what we do within touch chat can really, really vary. So it's actually like sending a report home and saying, it's a Word document, but you need to know more than that, right? It's all the content that's within that Word document. Saying touch chat is like saying Word document. So within touch chat, there are a whole bunch of templates that we start from. And so when we say 42, it means that there's 42 buttons on a page. We have a lot of students on WordPower 60 Basic. This is a screenshot from WordPower 60 Basic. I'm going to be using this quite a bit during our webinar. I do find that when I'm doing online stuff and doing touch chat stuff, I get a lot of glare, and you can actually see the studio lights that I have going on here, but it can be kind of tricky to do that. And depending on it's really very well lit in here, but if I'm in a more dim room, if I show this, then it blacks out my face, or it focuses on my face and it blacks out the screen or whites out the screen. So this is just a little tip for you if you're doing anything virtually, that sometimes it's nice to just have a few pages, sometimes like just the main page, and we'll get into the organization, but the verb pages, for example, just to model that vocabulary while you're doing virtual sessions. In any case, so this is the WordPower 60 Basic vocabulary. The one we have in the PowerPoints is the WordPower 42. So 42 buttons, 60 buttons. What does WordPower mean? WordPower was invented by a woman named Nancy Inman. She's a speech pathologist. And what she looked at the frequency that a word gets used, but also what words get used with other words. So when you, for example, say I is a pronoun, and what follows a pronoun in a sentence? Often a verb. So pronouns are yellow, verbs are green, and you'll notice that as soon as I press I, it'll all turn to green. So now we have all verbs, and that's meant as what's called a rate enhancement feature. So it allows me to put sentences together faster by providing that prediction, as opposed to, we might, without WordPower, have a system where I hit I, and then I have to go verbs. So it's just one less button hit for me to get there. It also, for example, it'll predict word endings. So if I say I eat, then it might predict that I want to say ate, but it also might predict that I want to eat a food as opposed to something technology related, for example. So that's all kind of WordPower. There's a lot of predictive sort of elements going on here. So sometimes I get asked by teams, is it possible to change the icon for this to something else, or can we change the location? What ends up happening, you'll notice here that the eat button is here, and when I press I, the eat button stays there. And the eat button is also there. So imagine if I had moved the eat button to like this location randomly. I would have to make sure that I follow all the links that have the eat button on it, and then make sure that those are all changed so that they all match the change that I made on the first initial page, which is a lot of work, as you can imagine, for something which really is not a big deal. The student can, if the student can learn to press it there, they can learn to press it there, right? So, so don't fight with the WordPower too much. It's a little bit crazy making. There's a lot of predictive elements built into that. Now, some of our students will have 60, WordPower 60, or WordPower 60 Basic. I have WordPower 60 Basic open here just to demonstrate, but if I go into a food page, for example, you'll notice that I have some pronouns here and the verb. So rather than starting with a sentence on this page, I can go in and open up, I'm doing this backwards. I can open up the food page and then start building a sentence here. So with somebody using a more basic vocabulary, you might pick an activity, find the right page, and start producing sentences all on the same page without the flipping around that you need to do. So you can use it two ways. When we have WordPower 60 without the basic, you don't have this stuff on the side. So when you go into the food page, you just have food. So you don't have any ability to make sentences on the same page. So talk to your AAC SLP. They can help guide the team in terms of selecting the right vocabulary. Where possible, I do try to maximize the number of buttons we put on a screen. We talked about that in the first video. And so WordPower 60 or 60 Basic is a really, really nice place to go. One of the advantages to that is if we have a number of students across the district using 60 Basic, what can happen is that when an EA moves from one school to another, then they have much less of a learning curve in learning to support that student. So where possible, we try to use 60 or 60 Basic, but if that's not going to work for some reason, then we do, there's lots of other options within TouchChat. If a student is spelling more, for example, we might choose a different vocabulary set. Before I get too ahead of myself, let's talk about the general organization of TouchChat. So you'll notice that these symbols that we have here are a little bit different than from what we have in BoardMaker. BoardMaker symbols are called PCS, or picture communication symbols. And it's just, you know, the different makers of the different symbol sets don't play well together. And so here we have a symbol set called Symbol Sticks. If your school is really, really interested in making visuals using this specific symbol set, for example, if you have a number of TouchChat users in your school and you want them to have, for example, like if we want something about play and we want to have that exact symbol for them, there is a website called News to You, sorry, and you can just subscribe to Symbol Sticks. I believe it's $75 US per year though, if you want to do that. So the other workaround for that, don't tell them I told you this, but you can actually get a 30-day free trial. So go in, get a 30-day free trial, get all the symbols that you need, and then when it runs out, use a different email address. I think we've all done that kind of thing before. Now, when you look at these buttons here, you'll notice that some of them, along the side here, we have some function buttons, but also you'll notice that some of the buttons, for example, to is just the word to, and when I press it, it goes up to the top, right? I'm gonna clear. And then we have some symbols with little icons in the corner, and that's an indication that it links to something. So when I press I, it goes to verbs, for example. Oh, it's hard to hold this. When I press eat, which also has a symbol, it links me to somewhere else. But if I go back to that home, for example, and I hit I, some of these verbs, like over here, they don't have linking pages. So I can just say am, for example, and I'll just end up with am going up to that top message window. While we're on the topic, this is the message window. And as I put the sentence together, once I'm finished, I can press that. That's a nonsense sentence, but don't worry about it. The other thing I can do to speak the sentence is press the period. And that period becomes a very important feature as students start to produce multiple sentences. So you might have a student that puts a sentence together, period, space, and then another sentence. I drink water.
I drink water.
And then you have periods between the separate sentences. So when it's read,
I drink water.
See how they had that gap between the two sentences? So that will become a very important feature. We also have the ABC 1, 2, 3 button here in the corner, and this will take you to a keyboard. So this keyboard does have a predictive feature in it. So when I hit T, it'll predict some words that start with T. It usually tends to predict high frequency words. It doesn't learn though. So if your student requests Tonka all the time, it's not going to suddenly predict Tonka for you, unfortunately. But we can talk about that if that is a feature that the student needs. So say I want to find a word. There's this feature on the keyboard page called Find Word. So we go into Find Word and we're going to look for horse. Okay, and I'm going to hit Find. And what you'll see is that it gives me a bunch of different options for where to find horse. Now, just because of the nature of WordPower, sometimes with words like horse, it's in a bunch of different places. So I would look at this and say, okay, so the top one is a farm animal. This one is a joke. This one is brown bear, brown bear. And this one is I went walking. So I think that that's another book. So I think that the first one seems like the best choice. And depending on the version of TouchChat you have, you can press that and mine's not new enough, but it'll actually take you, it'll gray out part of the screen and take you through the sequence to get to that word. It's not something I would use with your student all the time and say, oh, we need to find the horse, right? It's more like I would look it up for myself and then I can continue to model that word for the student. Groups. Okay, so when we're using this system for communication, there's different categories of words that we're going to need. So if we go into groups here, a lot of the words that we need are going to be in here. So we have lots of words like vehicles, technology, tools, toys and games, clothes, containers, foods. I really encourage you to explore this. And we want to make sure where possible that we're not storing words in too many different places because it just gets confusing. So, if we have a pen, it's probably actually under art. It doesn't also need to be under home and school and music and jobs. Just learn to go to your writing implements under the art page. I'm just going to go back to the main page again. So yeah, we have people in here. And so there's lots of room for customization. So we can put the students' people in here. This home page should be reserved for family and people that are permanently in the student's life. School people should go under school people. I'll be recording another video to show you how to add photos to videos. Once you've gone through, we call that level 2 touch chat training. Once you've gone through that, if you've gone through it with us and you've written the quiz, then you're a person that is kind of cleared to do editing on that device. We also have a social button, you'll notice, and it has some social phrases in here. So one of the things that is often an IEP goal is for the student to initiate participating in an activity with a peer, for example. And in kindergarten, we might want a button that says, do you want to play with me? Now, depending on where the student is in terms of their communicative competence, their skill with communication, we might want that to look different ways and we might approach it in different ways. So if we have a student that's just learning the basics of communication, then yes, we might want a button that says, do you want to play with me? We might also do that for a student who is just learning that initiation with a peer piece, right? So we're really just focusing on that initiation piece, and so we're making the initiation piece easier by not applying language demands and just giving them one button. However, if this is a student who is already initiating with a peer, and we're just trying to get them to do it using words, then we don't need to sort of simplify that interaction at all. What we can actually do is, rather than having the student press a button that speaks the whole sentence for them, then we can just teach them to say play and go from there. We can backward chain that. So it might start with play, and then we might say want play, or I want play me, you play me. There's different ways that we can go about producing that sentence. But then as we get outside of the K1 grades, and it's no longer appropriate in like grade 6 for somebody to be going up to somebody and saying, do you want to play with me? You can actually transition that skill very nicely to, do you want to read with me, for example, right? And so it provides the student with options in terms of generating sentences, in terms of and in terms of asking for a different variety of activities. Anything else I want to tell you about that? We also have a places button, time button, and describing words button. And I haven't pointed out yet that in turquoise over here, we have sort of like preposition sort of words. And we also have more extra sort of little words over here. So explore this, but really the first step of implementation of the AAC device is really focusing on this front page and making sure that you are modeling these words across the day. This is the place where you get started. So vocabulary considerations. Sometimes we have a student with an AAC system and for some reason it's just not going well. And one thing that I often ask the team to look at is motivation. So are they motivated to communicate? One of the examples that I often use is I like chocolate. So if I loaned a friend a book and to say thank you, she gave me some chocolate, that's a very nice gesture, thank you very much, right? But then if one day the North Van School District said, rather than paying you with money, we're going to pay you with chocolate, that wouldn't fly. So sometimes for some students where motivation is a factor, we can't just look at what's chocolate for these students. We need to look at what is money. What is the thing that's really going to provide that payback that they want? And we might need to be creative about it. So I remember going to a course once and a woman told me that the only thing that a student was motivated by was elevators. So they went onto like a field trip into the community and rode an elevator up and down. So find that thing that's really, really motivating and use that. And then think about what the student really wants. When they're making requests, they don't want you to say, good job, nice talking, anything like that. If they ask you for a banana, they want a piece of banana. So if you can have the banana already cut up so that you can give it to them right away, great. So they say banana, they should be receiving that banana within half a second of requesting it, especially if requesting is a new skill for them. Now, if you don't already have the banana cut up, they still don't want you to say good job or nice talking. What's more important is that they know that you're getting the banana for them. So if my student said banana, I would say, banana, yes, here you go. Let's go get some more banana, right? And indicate to them that we're getting some banana and we're on our way there rather than saying good talking, because that's not what the student wants. One more thing about motivation, actually, to go back, is sometimes we have students that don't seem to have a lot of preferences. They're just kind of happy with everything that you give them, and they're equally happy with everything. And it's really difficult to know what they're interested in. And sometimes, these teams are saying, we brought out a puzzle once and she just wasn't interested. One thing to remember is that we need to continually expose our students to different kinds of activities so that they can learn about them and learn what they prefer and don't prefer. So if a student is new to puzzles, they might not understand the task of a puzzle, they might not understand why it might be fun, and they might actually need to do it a few times and learn about puzzles before they can actually say, yes, I do like puzzles. So continue to explore different options for activities, different types of activities, but also provide repetition within those activities with those new activities so that the student can really learn about them, and don't give up, just keep trying. So updating vocabulary. Like I said, I'm going to record another video hopefully shortly about updating your vocabulary in TouchChat. But think about how much do you need to update? Some questions to ask yourself. How motivated is the student to talk about these things? For example, if there's a trampoline available in the school, but the student it's not a thing for them, then that trampoline probably doesn't need to be in there. How often do you, the communication partner, talk to your student about these things? If it's something that you talk about every single day, multiple times a day, then yes, that might be a good thing to be in the communication system. The other thing to think about is how long will you be talking about that? So let's explore that a little bit more. So we have a page here of personal core. This was actually something that was taken from one of my students' touch chat systems. He was on WordPower, it looks like 20. So the class did a lot of gardening, and he did some gardening at home. So that we had some steps for some gardening and then also some vegetables because that was what was in the garden. And then so we would go into the vegetable page and talk about the different vegetables that were planted in the garden. This was a really important thing for him. It happened multiple times a week, and he was really interested in it, and we could bring out photos of him gardening and talk about them in class even when he wasn't gardening. So this was something that was really important to be in his touch chat system. This is something that I took from my daughter's classroom in kindergarten. Her teacher just had some visuals about some classroom expectations, and I look at that and I think those are good skills for all of our students to have. So it might be a good thing for us to have that vocabulary in the device so that when the teacher is speaking to the class about these concepts, that we can mirror that on and model that in the communication system as well. You might even find that words like quiet and listen and sit are already in touch chat. There's a lot of vocabulary in here. So if you want to figure out if those words are already in there, then I would go into that keyboard page, use the word finder, and locate the word. A lot of these words will already be in there. Now, when you're in a classroom, there's often a classroom theme that's happening. This, again, is from my daughter's classroom. And so when we look at this rainbow hair poem, there's a few things going on here. We have the word rainbow, but then we also have all these colors. Colors are a great thing for students to know about. It's a good describing word. So a lot of students are into colors or into a particular color. So it's a good thing for students to know. Rainbow, on the other hand, a student might care about rainbows, a student might not care about rainbows. And so if it's something that the student just really doesn't care either way about, then it might not be the thing to focus on during this unit. I also have a little visual here of, all the things that get pulled out when Halloween comes around. But, when we think about Halloween, it's great to have our student included in that Halloween conversation in the classroom, but it's not necessarily something we're talking about in PE or on the playground, or even in a couple weeks, all this vocabulary is going to be gone. So do we need all that vocabulary to be programmed into touch chat? Because by the time we get it programmed, we might be on to the next topic of conversation. And so it would be great for inclusion for the student to have access to this vocabulary. So what I have done in the past is rather than program them into the students' touch chat and make new pages and all that kind of stuff, you can just walk into a classroom, see what vocabulary, there might be a word wall or something, take a picture of the word wall and make something like this in black and white. If you want it colored, the student can color it, and just put this on the desk so that when we're doing writing activities or sharing activities, when we're in the classroom, that we have this vocabulary available. And you'll notice here that, I've put jack-o'-lanterns because we might see those when we're out for trick-or-treating. I have candy here, I have costume here, I have scared, but I haven't really put things like bats because you might not see bats very often in our community. And when you think about prioritizing some of the vocabulary over others, for one student, this might be what you've decided to just focus on. You don't have to do the 12 vocabulary words that the classroom is doing. You've sort of reduced the demands by just doing that. And again, just put that on the desk. This is another lesson that I found in my daughter's kindergarten classrooms. It was a lesson on apples. And so what you could do, again, if you have something like this in your classroom, is just take a picture, print it out on just regular paper in black and white. Again, if you want this to be in color, your student can color it. But we have vocabulary words here like leaf, stem, seeds, skin, flesh. For a student who's just learning the basics of communication, those might not be the most important words for them. Other words that might go along with an apple lesson might be eat, crunchy, red, green, big, small, and words that are going to lend itself more to being applied across their life Again, it kind of depends on where the student is at with their vocabulary. I would say focus, in this case, you might not be able to find the word STEM in TouchChat. So is it worth all the effort to get it in there, or should you just focus on words like red and green? Again, up to you. But if you're confused about this kind of stuff, talk to your AAC SLP and see if there's any specific recommendations around what to do in this scenario. The other thing is you can actually talk about things in your environment by just pointing to them. So if you are doing a lesson and say you have a speaker that's come in with some artifacts, then what you can do is you can just use your TouchChat core vocabulary to talk about them and just point to the items that are on the display table, for example, as well. And that vocabulary doesn't need to be added. And that's one way to work with sort of some props in the classroom on the fly. So I hope you've learned a bit about TouchChat. It's really about getting going. We talked a little bit about the Core Word of the Week program in the last video, so I hope that you'll get a core vocabulary of the week program going in your school. And again, I would pick words from this main page first to focus on. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the iPad settings that are available to us to support using TouchChat in schools. So first of all, we want to make sure that this is a talker and it's for talking purposes only. So we use this bright blue case to distinguish it from other iPads. And if the student is going to be watching videos for reinforcement or for video modeling or for anything like that, we want to be doing that on a separate iPad. We do that for a couple of reasons. One, this is just a talker and just for talking, and we don't want the student to really think about being able to watch videos on here. The other is if we're watching a video, we also want to be able to talk about it just like anybody would. So because of that, and because we're only going to be looking at TouchChat on here, when I wake up my iPad, I want it to go right into TouchChat. So when I press my home button here, it goes straight into TouchChat. And so what I've turned on is a feature called Guided Access. If you'd like to set that up for your student, you can Google how to set up Guided Access on my iPad, and there's lots of links that'll take you through that. One thing to know about Guided Access is that there's, once you've turned it off, there's an interface that looks like this. And it gives you some options, and you can go into the options, and you want to make sure that your ability to turn on and off the sleep wake button, so the button at the top of the iPad, you want to be able to put it to sleep. So you want to make sure that that is turned green and that the volume button is turned green. And then you also, if you set up accessibility shortcuts, I have mine set up so that if I triple click this, then you'll see that Guided Access has been started. So that's a great tool that everybody should be using. So I also have privacy settings and restrictions here to talk to you about. Just so you guys know, the privacy settings and restrictions are set on iPad so that you can basically look at anything online. And we are often working with students in elementary schools, and so sometimes we need to set those so that we don't come across something accidentally. It's not as much of an issue because we're mostly just working with TouchChat on this, but just so you guys know, for your other iPads in your life as well. One of the other things that I always want to make sure of is that the editing is turned off. So what I mean is that right here in the corners, we have these buttons that say vocab and menu. And so if I go into menu and I hit edit page, I can accidentally, not with this one, but with a student's customized vocabulary, I would be able to move these buttons around and delete them, for example. And I've actually had students accidentally get themselves into the edit page settings and then accidentally delete buttons and change things, and they didn't mean to, and it can be really quite upsetting for them. So the way that we work with that is that we make sure we turn the editing off. So if you Google TouchChat turn editing off, I'm sure that you'll find a video, but it's really quick. So what you'll do is you go outside of this and you go into your iPad settings, okay? And then on the left here, you have your apps. So then you scroll all the way down until you get to TouchChat way down at the bottom here. And you open up TouchChat. And then there's a button here that says allow editing. And that's turned to green. That means that I am able to edit. So what you wanna do is just turn that off. Oops, turn that off. And when I go into Touch Chat again, you will notice that the vocab and menu buttons are gone now along that orange bar. So now I can't accidentally change things. And so that's an excellent feature to turn on to make sure that everything is staying the way you want it. One of the other things that I often want to make sure that, one of the other things that I make sure of is that the voice is set to an age and gender appropriate voice. So we want to make sure that, you know, a boy in grade 2 doesn't have an adult woman's voice, for example, and that, you know, as we are getting older and going into high school, for example, we might need to talk about voice changes and allow the student to pick the voice that they feel represents them the most. And actually, I worked with a young woman once, and she told me that she thought that her voice would be higher. So we actually worked with the pitch settings a little bit to try to increase the pitch of her voice, and she ended up quite happy with it. So there's lots of things that we can do, and depending on the student's cognitive ability, you might want to include your student in those decisions as well. There's another sort of add-on thing that we can be using with Touch Chat, and it's called Realize Language. And we're not going to go hugely in depth into it today. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. It is a data tracking software, and it's web-based. And so what it does is it uploads your use of Touch Chat into Realize Language, and Realize Language will analyze it for you. So things that we're looking at are what time of day is it being used, what time of day is it not being used, what kind of vocabulary is being used, and it's really meant to be sort of a starting point to do some troubleshooting. So we might find that a student is pretty much only using nouns, and based on all the conversations we've had, you know that we need to increase the use of core vocabulary for these students. So we might then say, okay, the student is using all nouns, that's great, let's really focus on those verbs, and you might set an IEP goal based on that. You might also find that you look at the data and you say, what's going on Tuesday mornings? Like you don't use it at all on Tuesday mornings. Well, it turns out that the class does a gardening thing on Tuesday morning, every Tuesday morning. And they don't want to take the iPad outside because they don't want to get it dirty. Well, it's great that we know that, because now we can troubleshoot through that as opposed to saying you just can't communicate during that time. So we might produce something on paper, something like, you know, we might produce something like this where we have access to core vocabulary. We might put some gardening vocabulary just to the top here and make sure that that vocabulary is also in the device. But it's an opportunity for us to sort of learn more about the day and learn about the different things that need troubleshootings, because we are not there day to day and sometimes we don't know that. So hopefully this has been helpful for you, and I hope to do another video to talk about the different ways that we can do the programming. So that video is to come, and let us know what you think, and have a good day.